walking distance, but they're offering rides that way. So if you don't have a plan, make one. I think it's really really important that you guys go this year. And also another fun thing that is happening is the NCC Dems have partnered with poli sci professors and experts, and so they are having an event all throughout the Science Center on Election Day where it's like where the like WGN's coming and there's gonna be experts there talking about the election and just kind of like having a conversation while it's like ongoing. So if you didn't have a place to watch the election or you need to get out of the house during that time and go to something, the Science Center is going to have like different rooms for different organizations you can go to. It's 79. Oh, it's 7 to 9. Sorry, I was like, we have 79 rooms in the Science Center. No, from 7 to 9, they'll be doing that. So make sure to go there if that is something that you're interested in. But yeah, that is a really important thing in the upcoming week. Another important thing, Halloween. So make sure you guys are staying safe and also dealing with that. That's all I have for you right now. I think we're going to transition to Nate singing, but thanks so much for listening to my announcements. And Nate, go for it.
Thanks, Daniel. I know there's been news today causing anxiety, elections upcoming. There are a lot of things that cause us anxiety and fear and uncertainty. And I just thought this song would be a good way to kind of sit back and relax our hearts and try to remind ourselves of God's faithfulness and that, God has seen situations like this before and God has seen humanity in this situation before and he's come through then and he will come through again. Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, oh, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Oh, you never fail, never fail. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hand, and this is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. Oh, you never failed me yet. I know the night won't last. Your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Oh, Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me alive, keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. The promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. Never failed me yet. Oh, you never failed.
Check, check. Thanks, Nate. Beautiful as always. Great first song to start the night with. Thank you. It's good to see you guys. I know we have a smaller crowd tonight, but that's okay. I'm excited to have the opportunity to share with you guys, and we have some other leaders that'll be sharing, but about one of my favorite words, empathy. So we'll just jump right in. If you've seen some of the social media posts, this is part of a Choose Empathy campaign that is part of Anti-Hate Week, sponsored by my office, Office of Faith and Action, as well as Center for Social Impact. So I'm just going to read a few things about it, and then we're going to have Naomi and Nate share some things as well. But most of all, hopefully these are reminders. We can see who's on here, and I trust all of your guys' hearts, and that this is something you guys lead your lives with. But let's just remind each other, not just of the power of empathy, but also, more importantly, it's a spiritual and Christian truth. For me, I believe that empathy is a crucial first step in proactively working against hatred and division. As I've thought through, the summer, with a lot of things going on since George Floyd's death, and obviously this is years and years and years and years coming, it's kind of hard to know where to start. It's hard to know where to make any progress. And I feel like the Lord's said to me multiple times, well, I've given you today, and I trust that, when the opportunities come to either speak up or reach out or do something big or small, you'll be ready. And I think for me, empathy offers a practical yet powerful approach in the work of anti-racism and in healing our political and cultural and religious and relational divides that are all too common. When we can remember that it is a person across from us, whether it's a person that represents a bunch of things we agree with or a bunch of things we disagree with, I think deep down, especially as Christians in the business of redemption, we should be more focused on, and I think we have that longing for more of an us mentality than a them mentality, and to get past that us versus them idea. I think empathy allows us to overcome indifference and reject apathy. And I think it's really foundational for renouncing fear and breaking down stereotypes. We may have these loud voices and pundits and all these things going back and forth, or chat boards or comment boards or whatever, what have you, but that's why we have terms such as like keyboard warrior. It would and should and hopefully feels different if you were to start saying those nasty things that we say or think to a person right across from you. And I think empathy kind of keeps those things in check. So from Jesus' teaching to love our neighbors to, if you're familiar with Carl Rogers as a counselor, he had this famous term of mine called unconditional positive regard, where it's kind of a mouthful, but basically you assume the best of the other person. And for us as Christians, we get to assume that someone's made in God's image, and we all have our rough spots and we all have our blind spots. But so empathy is not just about warm fuzzies, pity, or a surface level understanding. It is kindness in action. It is love out loud. It is a commitment to being with and for one another. It is good for our souls, contributes to an abiding sense of hope and healing, like I said earlier, this idea of redemption, and it reorientates our daily routines. And one of the hallmark articles, if you're familiar with emotional intelligence, that maybe you've had to read in some of your classes, it's a trait of emotional intelligence. And that original article a couple years ago was written to the business world, saying you can have apples to apples practices as far as management and business expertise, but the managers that subscribe to emotional intelligence, which would include empathy, their bottom lines are better, things like that. So it's not just like I said, just a soft term that has no outcomes. But all that to say, we see it in Jesus. So we're going to explore 3 words real quick. It's just going to be 2 or 3 minutes for each of us. We're going to talk about asking with empathy, listening with empathy and understanding with empathy. And we'll just open it up to after that, just for a couple of ways we can encourage each other. So, like I said, I'm glad everyone's here, and I think this is something that we can continue to commit to as a focus community. So, I'm going to welcome Naomi up to speak about asking with empathy.
All right, hi everyone. I'm going to be talking about asking. So, I think it would be accurate to say that this year has not been what any of us expected or hoped for. The challenges that get thrown our way on a daily basis, both on a global scale and on a personal level, can leave us feeling helpless and exhausted a lot of the time. More often than not, I've found myself asking, when is this going to end? When is life going to get back to normal? For me, this year has also coincided with a period of time of grappling with my own faith. For the first time in my life, I've asked questions about the existence of God. I've questioned the goodness of a God who allows terrible things to happen to good people. I've wondered how an all-loving God could supposedly punish those who don't believe in him, even if these people are good and kind and arguably more faithful than I am, even though we don't practice the same religion. I asked if I was putting my faith in the wrong thing. I'd never asked these questions before, and it kind of freaked me out. As I was asking all these questions, the pandemic hit, and our worlds got turned upside down. As I'm sure you can all relate to, I watched so many things I looked forward to get crossed off the calendar. At the beginning of 2020, I thought I had a pretty solid idea of what the year would bring. But if there's anything this year has taught me, it's to not get too comfortable with plans. We can be confident that we have it all figured out, but then the world throws us a curveball and we feel absolutely clueless once again. Ultimately, I think we're all pretty clueless, even when we like to think we have it under control. We are constantly running around trying to navigate our lives and our faith the best we can, but there really is no right answer. I think one of the things I've appreciated the most about the Focus community during my time at North Central is the freedom to ask questions and sit in our cluelessness. The interdenominational foundation of Focus allows me, during normal times, to sit next to someone who's brought up in the Catholic tradition, someone who was raised in a non-denominational church, and someone who may be hearing about Jesus for the first time. I think there's so much power in sitting down and truly listening to someone talk about their lived experiences and how it impacts the way they view the world and the concept of God, or even something that's just bigger than themselves. Through listening to others, we are also afforded the opportunity to ask honest questions to begin to understand what it may be like to walk in their shoes. By asking questions, we choose empathy. Choosing empathy is not easy, but it's the best way that I know how to bridge the gaps between our array of upbringings, worldviews, fields of study, political orientations, and beliefs about God. Back in February, when I was really questioning my faith and having a pretty tough time, Brian Rainbow gave me a book by Anne Lamott called Help, Thanks, Wow. The title is based on 3 essential prayers: a call for help, a thank you, and a declaration of amazement for all that God has done and created. I found myself wanting to say help more than thanks or wow in 2020. And while I was reading this book, one quote really stood out to me that I've kept coming back to. It says, "Help prayers acknowledge that I am clueless, but something else isn't." I think that statement is really relevant, not only in the time of the pandemic, but also in our discussion of faith and empathy. We can acknowledge that we don't have all the answers to what our future holds, and when things will get back to normal, or even if things like the role of God in our lives. Allowing ourselves to ask questions about these things opens up space in our own hearts and minds to not only let God in, but to let others in and begin to understand and share their feelings as well. By asking how our friends are and checking in on our loved ones, we choose empathy. By asking to learn more about someone before judging them based on the color of their skin or where they live or who they plan to vote for in the election, we choose empathy. By asking questions and keeping an open mind in the face of uncertainty, we choose empathy.
Naomi, coming in hot. That was so good. Let's just end it there. It's good seeing everybody. We'll see you guys next week, or if you're getting burritos. Just kidding. Naomi, thanks. You're the best. That was really good. I get to highlight the word listen. I'm going to start off with a non-spiritual source, the 1999 film called Fight Club. Not the most savory film. Probably shouldn't even recommend it, standing here before the Lord. But there's a memorable scene that's always stuck out to me when I think about listening. If you're familiar with the film, I won't give too much away, but it's been out for a long time, so sorry. But Edward Norton Jr.'s character is a depressed person. He's kind of just stuck in this valley of despair. He's kind of just got his 9-to-5 job. He's got a real nice apartment, and he just lives for himself. Nothing going on. Somehow or another, he ends up finding some solace and some peace and comfort in support groups, various grief groups, like cancer survivor or sickness groups, grief recovery groups, what have you. And then later in the film, he's talking about why he goes to those. And he says, he's talking to this other person, and he says to her, he says, when people think you're dying, they really, really listen to you instead of just, and then she interrupts him, instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. And I really like that. I think even in the ways we want to agree with someone and empathize with someone, we may even, our wheels start turning towards, let me, again, out of the kindness of our heart, validate what they're saying, instead of just, letting their words linger and let that be an exercise for them. Or on the very bad end of the spectrum, we're already coming back with our argument. We're already coming back with why we disagree. So listening, to quote Fight Club, is not just waiting for my turn to speak, not just waiting for our turn to speak. So practically speaking, what does your listening look like? Or another important question, I'll put it this way first. How do you think God listens to us? Our Heavenly Father or our Savior Jesus, the one that is the friend that sticks closer to a brother? Do you think God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, in their infinite wisdom, power, and knowledge, that they're callously ready to jump in when we're talking, when we're praying? Do you think they want to demonstrate their knowledge of how right they are? Do they, even in an attempt to validate our words, our feelings, our pain, our experiences, cut us off and say, that happened to me too, which, Jesus can probably say, or I can totally relate. Do you think that God or Jesus, probably worst of all, allow their first step to be one of self-righteousness towards us, telling us how wrong we are? Hey, just so you know, you're way off. You're not enlightened or aware like I am. You have no clue. You have a long way to go. Or to interrupt us and say, hey, that's not how it went. I was there. I was there. No, they don't do that. God doesn't do that. Jesus doesn't do that. And I think I'll just go to scripture to say it a better way. I'm reminded of one of my favorite passages, and while not specifically mentioning listening or empathy or Anti-Hate Week 2020 at North Central College, this passage is so spot on. It's one of my favorites in an approach to how we should strive to imitate Jesus in his empathy, in our listening and understanding, in our desire for unity instead of divisiveness, and our call, like I started to say, to emulate Jesus' humility. So maybe this sounds familiar. It's Philippians chapter 2. And in my Bible, it kind of at the top said, imitating Christ's humility. And again, try to see this through the lens of listening and through choosing empathy. Therefore, if any of you have any encouragement from united in Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, in your listening, in your empathy, and so on, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that in the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God our Father. If you want to revisit that, that's Philippians chapter 2, the first 11 verses. So let's strive for this. Let's picture how the Lord tenderly walks with us, knowing us inside and out, intimately aware of our strengths and our weaknesses. And I say, let's get creative in picturing how he approaches us, and how we can approach our daily lives in this world, day in and day out, with family members, friends, enemies, comment boards, our, even just in our own thoughts and hearts where we have some of this anger and vitriol come up, and find ways to choose empathy in our listening. Again, this can go this week when we're talking about voting and politics, as always. But it's also an opportunity, just practically speaking, to kind of think through, as we are Christians and Christ followers, how to, mitigate that listening, just waiting for our turn to speak. And we can do a bunch of different ways that actively demonstrate our listening, but ways that, are wholehearted, rooted in empathy and humility. So those what I got for listening, and then Nate's going to wrap us up with understand.
Hey everyone. I'm just going to touch on understanding, which is the final facet of empathy that we're going to be talking about. I've been reflecting on understanding and how that influences empathy, and I just have a couple of thoughts that I want to share. The first is that understanding is one of the most important facets of empathy, because obviously, we need to ask questions, we need to listen to those questions. But what is the good of that if we don't care to understand what we're listening? If I take time to hear your story, but I don't actually care to understand where that story has put you and how that story has influenced who you are and who you've become, then how is that any better than it going in one ear and out the other? So understanding is really what allows us to empathically put ourselves in people's shoes. So in the context of Anti-Hate Week, I've been thinking about why understanding is so critical. And I think it's because understanding is a powerful antidote to hate. By that I mean, I think in my life it's been easy to oversimplify hate as a coping mechanism. It's easy to come into contact with racism, sexism, xenophobia, all of the above, and say, well, that's a hateful person, and just leave it at that. And it is much more challenging to say, that is a person who has become afflicted by hate. That's somebody whose life experiences, whose upbringing, whose indoctrination, whose cultural context, etc., has led them to this point where this is what they're pouring out of themselves. And that's harder to deal with for me, because that to me is something that I can influence. That's something that I can try to understand and show love to. But that's harder to do, and it's easier for me to say that's just a hateful person and walk away. So in the context of empathy, I'd encourage us to understand people's stories, whether that be somebody we agree with or somebody we disagree with, whether that's somebody who we think is a positive force in our lives and somebody who we think is a negative force in our lives. Everybody is who they are for a reason. Nobody is born the way they are right now. So understanding is what allows us to love people effectively. By understanding how we've become who we are, then that's how we can ask questions and listen to people's stories and care for them in a positive way that might change their outlook on life. So in summary, understanding helps us change our perception of hate. Like Brian mentioned at the very start, it helps us understand that underneath everything, we're all people, and we're all people worthy of love, worthy of care, and worthy of being understood. Thanks.
back again one more time. We're just going to open up. I know we have a smaller group, but we wanted to open up for a few minutes to see if anybody had anything they wanted to share about personal instances where empathy is, made the difference. Again, like we said, it's not just this warmth; it is an action. And whether it's an example of someone looking back on your life, maybe you didn't call it empathy at the moment, but maybe now we're just briefly reflecting. It makes you recall a time that you received empathy, or if you care to share, is there a place, a person, a relationship that maybe you'd want to emphasize empathy in a new way? Like I said, I know we have a smaller group. You could probably do it via the chat, or we can turn people on and just have you share it within the group with your audio or with your camera on too. So Melissa is monitoring the computer, so we can take a few minutes to do that. Absolutely no pressure, but we would love to hear from some other people. We'll just leave it open for a couple minutes.
Now they should be able to hear me, I think. Cool.
Hello. I'm just gonna speak. Can you hear me? I realized
Yeah,
I realized that typing was gonna be really ineffective time wise. There was a story that was shared at my church a few years ago, and it was talking about um, these prisoners that were being liberated from concentration camps during the Holocaust, at the end of the Holocaust, and there were these people, like soldiers, coming in to like rescue these people, and there were these like prisoners that were like laying on the ground, and they wouldn't go with the soldiers like when they were coming to get them, because like when they were standing above them, and these soldiers eventually like laid down on the ground next to these people who are like literally like laying so like hungry and broken, and like it was like when they laid down next to them on the ground that they finally like stood up with them and were able to leave. And I thought that it was this really powerful like image of empathy, um, and that like we can never like fully experience someone else's experience in its full like capacity, but in the sense that we like make the effort to try and to meet people where they're at. It was just this really powerful story, and I always come back to that with this idea of empathy, and that sometimes it like takes us like laying down and meeting people where they're at, really make change. So that's my thought.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
I think just one aspect of empathy that I need to focus on within myself is um, being quick to listen and slower to talk, and just reminding myself of that with every person I talk to, regardless if it's somebody that I talk to 20 times a day or once a month, to just focus on listening and letting them know that they're heard instead of putting my own things forward, or being so quick to talk and like dominate a conversation or something like that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something I struggle with too, is trying to empathize vocally by, saying, "Oh, I understand," or "Here's a way that I relate," without taking the second to say, "I actually can't completely understand or relate." But by I can show my best support by giving them the space to tell their story, um, and to do my best to try to understand. They don't have to know that I'm trying to understand by me telling them that I understand, But yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Max. Thanks. Jerry, did you want to try again? I saw you were. Yep. I still can't hear you, my dude. Yeah, he fixed it last time. I believe in you. Yeah, me too. Does anyone have anything?
Yo, ask Nate how
How about now?
You're golden.
Okay. I agree with what Max said a lot. I think a lot of the times we're caught up in our own individual perceptions of the world, and so that inhibits us from being able to like truly put ourselves in someone else's shoes. But I think the first step to being more empathetic is to listen before you speak. And I think the Bible mentions that many times. Sometimes the wisest person is the person that keeps their mouth shut, and listens. And I think that's a great place to start.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jerry. Yeah. Up in there.
Sorry, the mic doesn't pick up from back there. Something that's been really helpful for me in terms of empathy, and listening as well, is trying to differentiate between listening to understand and listening to respond, because I have often find myself in situations where I am listening and thinking of a witty comeback that's going to be like, I'm about to just like annihilate their argument completely. Like this is something I'm going to win. And that's definitely not helpful. And that's not me listening or trying to learn anything about them or what they're talking about. So definitely for me, it was finding the difference between listening to understand and listening to respond. And it's definitely helped me like empathize better with individuals, and whether that's people I don't know or my own family. So that's something I definitely think about.
Thank you, Daniel. Should we turn it back? Thank you guys all very much for sharing and for being here tonight. This was all very important conversation, and I'm glad that you were here to be a part of that. And for everyone watching, I hope that you were able to do your own self-reflection about, where you need empathy, how you experience empathy, things that you can work on in your life to be more empathetic and loving for everyone. So thank you all, and we're going to bring it back to close us out. Oh, God.
Hey, can you guys hear me? One of my biggest inspirations for empathy, and probably a lot of yours, is Jesus himself. And what better way to understand the people he created than to walk among them, spend time with them? That example has been set for us. Jesus, what a Savior, what a brother, what a friend, lifter of the lowly. God, you meet me where I am. Your heart, it knows no borders, knows no walls. You're constantly moving towards me with open arms. There's never been a love like yours. There's never been a love like yours. Oh, there's never been a love like yours. There's never been a love like yours. Jesus, what a Savior, what a brother, what a friend, lifter of the lowly. Oh God, you meet me where I am. Your heart, it knows no borders, knows no walls. You're constantly moving towards me with open arms. There's never been a love like yours. Oh, there's never been a love like yours. Ah, there's never been a love like yours. There's never been a love like yours. Ah, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. What Hallelujah. What a beautiful way. Oh, there's never been a love like yours. 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 Oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. What a beautiful way you've shown us. Hallelujah, hallelujah. What a beautiful way. Oh, there's never been a love like yours. There's never been a love like yours. Oh, there's never been a love like yours. Oh, there's never been a love like yours. Ah.
Thank you again for joining us tonight, for facilitating that conversation. The rest of Anti-Hate Week, there's still some stuff that has been planned. There's a flyer out. If you have not seen the flyer and would like to see it, shoot me an email and I can send that your way. A couple opportunities for some anti-hate training and some support groups. So feel free to check those out. In the meantime, continue to love, support, listen, understand each other the best ways you can. And good luck with the rest of the week. For those of you who are getting burritos with us, you'll be hearing from us shortly about how that will all work. But in the meantime, let's close with our benediction. And as we go in peace, may the love of God surround you, may the grace of God astound you, and may the hope of God ground you. Amen. And next week, we will be hearing from Tanya. Hype. So be here. See you later.